ahead and get started. I got the other one that did give up, so I'll identify this another way.
All right, it's actually a little past 7, about 2 minutes after 7, so I'm gonna call the Carroll County Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for September 28th, 2021 to order. And the first item on the agenda is introduction of the members.
Jeff Watson, represent the area plan commission.
Lou Hayden, represent the mayor. Doug Walker, represent the schools.
Everett Snowberger, Town of Campbell.
Amy Davis, area plan director.
Or Mills, administrative assistant. Cindy Garland, legal counsel.
Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from August 24th, 2021. Everyone should have a copy of the minutes in the meeting, or in the meeting packet. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes as presented?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion from the board? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is special exception SE 2021-3, Bean and Granger. And we have an application for an exception or variance for 1378 West, 1050 North, Delphi, Indiana. No, that's the address number, I'm sorry, excuse me. 703 East Monroe Street. You know, and it's proposed use short-term rental through Airbnb for residential overnight occupancy. And Cameron, I assume that the fee has been paid and signed, posted, and advertised as required.
All items required were handled, advertised, the sign was put on the correct amount of times.
Okay, thank you. Is anyone here from Bean and
Granger, yes. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
My name is Jeff Bean,
Okay.
and along with Eric Granger, who is seated here this evening, we are the owners of the property at 703 East Monroe. We reside in Rock Creek Township in Carroll County. So we are pleased to share some time with you tonight, and we appreciate the time to talk with you about how we propose to use this property as a short-term rental, and also to suggest the legal framework by which you may view the factors that we think weigh in favor of granting this special exception. It may be helpful, before we get into the details, to do a quick background on this subject property. Cameron, if you don't mind moving to the next slide. This is one of many of the fine historic homes that are located here in the city of Delphi. It was built in 1915 by Elizabeth Fisher Murphy. She lived there with her husband for a decade or so, moving out in the late 1920s. At that point, a family that some of you may recognize, the Goff family, purchased the property and lived there for 4 decades. The Goffs, as you may remember, operated a variety store on the Courthouse Square. And if you grew up and attended the old high school, as I did, you might have gone by the Goff residence. If you were doing a class in PE or doing a recess, you might be going down to the city park and you might have seen Mrs. Goff waving to you from the balcony. After the Goffs sold the property in 1989, sadly, it fell into disrepair. Cameron, the next slide, please. This is a photo as it existed in 2016. The house was vacant. It had been abandoned for about 7 years. It had holes in the roof. You can tell that when the rain poured in, there were buckets placed to try to catch the rain from destroying the interior of the house. Next slide, please. Here's another photo showing the attempts, at least, to patch the holes in the roof. At the same time, it had many broken windows. It had no mechanicals. Utility service was non-existent. And although I said earlier the house had been abandoned and no one was living there, I should correct that. There was a family of raccoons that took up residence in the house, and despite the best efforts of the Delphi Preservation Society to remove those, this little fellow survived and poked his head out one of the holes in the roof. Next slide. We purchased the property in 2016, and frankly, our goal was simply to save the property. It needed to be preserved. But we started the work to remove a neighborhood eyesore to correct light that was affecting what is otherwise a very strong, attractive residential street in the city of Delphi. We were committed to using local tradesmen in the restoration of this house. We wanted to invest in the local economy. At the time that we made our purchase, there were over $16,000 owed in unpaid property taxes. We paid those. And in the years that we have spent restoring the property, we've added to the coffers about $4,000 in current property taxes. Next slide. So if you've had a chance to walk by or drive by the property, this is how it exists and would appear to you today. We are very pleased that it has been restored. We opened the door for this past weekend to nearly 300 people who toured it as part of the Delphi Historic Home Tour. I can't tell you how many people commented that they've always marveled at the house, always wanted to see the inside. We were pleased to be able to do that. We'd like to continue that and to make the home available to this community and to do so by offering it by short-term rentals. Next slide, please. So we are here tonight on an application for a special exception. It is a non-owner occupied short-term rental located in a U2 urban residential district. Next slide, please. We are marketing it as the Rock House for obvious reasons. It will be non-owner occupied. It will have 2 bedrooms. We will have a maximum of 4 guests that can stay during any given period. It is marketed or will be marketed on Airbnb. We require a 2-night minimum stay, and we have provided our emergency contact information to all the close by neighbors, and of course we'll be giving that to all guests who would stay at the house as well. There are 4 off-street parking spots provided, and I think importantly, and I'm not sure if Cameron has sent this out ahead of time
Yes.
to the board, okay. Importantly, we have crafted what we call the house rules. The 7-page document is what a guest at the residence will have to read and adhere to as part of their occupancy or their guest stay. Not only do these rules instruct the guests to respect the property and not to do any damage or destruction, but it also instructs them to respect the neighborhood and to respect and not disturb the neighbors. I'll go into more detail on that in just a minute. Next slide. Here's a quick aerial view of where the property is located, oriented toward the city. As you'll see with the red pin, it is at the intersection of Monroe Street and Bowen Avenue. It is bordered on one side, clearly by the deep wooded ravine that leads onto the city park. Though that wooded area goes around the rear of the property and shields it from any other property, save the railroad easement, which is toward the rear, and on the other side of that railroad easement is U.S. Aggregates. Importantly, it is also separated from all the adjoining properties by city streets. So it is a very isolated property in that respect. Next slide, please. Although I don't have a pin on this one, again, if you will look at Bowen Avenue and Monroe Street and that intersection, it happens to be right at the border, the defining line between a U1 and a U2 urban residential district. Next slide. So in 2018, the Delphi City Council passed an ordinance authorizing short-term rentals within all districts as a permitted use. My understanding is that this may be only the second application that has been made to this body since that ordinance passed. So it may be helpful as a quick refresher on what the framework is legally with regard to review of short-term rental applications. First of all, I've highlighted the preamble language of the ordinance. In the next slide, you will see, Cameron, thank you, the actual language highlighted that amended the ordinance. This refers to U2. You'll see that it flips you back to U1. It says if it's permitted under U1, then we're going to permit it under U2. Cameron, next slide. And there you see the language, specifically in section 1B12, a non-owner occupied short-term rental is a permitted use as a special exception under the Board of Zoning Appeals. Yes, sir.
Where are you at in zoning?
It's the Delphi zoning.
It's
That's
the,
where I'm at. I'm in the Delphi zoning ordinance.
it's the 2018 amendment, sir.
So the amendment that's in the back?
Not sure. But the
Yeah, because it's not in the, that's not in the U2 zoning rules as we have our books.
Oh, you have it.
So the amended part,
Yeah, because U2 for urban district, does not, U1 does not have, level one. Yeah, I take that back. U1 has an 11, it is bed and breakfast. Like,
that's the city of Delphi.
yeah, that's where I'm at, City of Delphi. Yeah. Because I was looking at the rules last night, and I'm sitting here going, I don't think it really needs to be here according to what I've got. But
Well, we'll give a recommendation and then it'll go in front of the city council.
Yeah.
That updated ordinance from the city, if that was not in that current book, and the current book we have now is what I got when I started, so that
Yeah.
part, I'll add that to.
Okay, so we probably do not have the most current set of rules.
Not your book, unless it was one of the amendments in the back section.
Section 1. So you're in section 1. Section 1, 2,
If it hasn't been added to our book, that's the current ordinance for the city of Delphi you have there. And if that needs to add it to that.
Yeah,
That's the first.
it is not in my.
This is the first we've had of this since I've been.
Since
so
you've been
I'll-
here.
Yeah, so I'll amend that to the new, I'll make
Jeff,
copies
you
of it for
didn't,
each name.
you didn't find it in your book, did you, Jeff?
No, but I read it in the city one, so I read it.
Okay. All right, so, okay.
I
Sorry for
hope that's helpful.
Please,
No, I
please,
want to make sure we
please,
understand the
please, please.
framework by which we're operating here this evening.
Okay.
So that is the highlighted language then, is the language in this amended ordinance that the city of Delphi passed in 2018 that allows non-owner occupied short-term rentals in any district in the city permitted as a use that is permitted if it granted a special exception. And that is why we're here tonight. Now, at the same time that the Delphi City Council was passing this ordinance, you might remember that the Indiana legislature was passing laws that strictly limited municipalities from regulating short-term rentals. And in fact, there were some municipalities, I believe Carroll in particular, that said we do not want short-term rentals operating in our city. So Indiana legislature passed two laws specifically that I think have issue here. Next slide, Cameron. This one in Indiana Code 36-124-9, which applies in this instance to short-term rentals that are not owner-occupied. And the law says that a unit such as BZA may require a special exception for a short-term rental that's in a residential zoning district, but you cannot interpret or enforce a zoning regulation for a special exception in a manner that is intended or has the effect of prohibiting or unreasonably restricting short-term rentals. Next slide. And again, another law that they passed in the same session, specifically saying, look, a local government such as Boza can regulate, but only in these instances, specifically number 1 and number 2. 3 applies to special circumstances such as manufacturing, distributing illegal drugs, none of which apply in this instance.
Go back.
Let me go back just one moment, I'm sorry, I will hurry, I will,
No
promise.
problem, all right.
But again, regulation must be done in a similar manner that it is done to other properties that are not short-term rentals. So that's the framework, the background by which we can consider the factors, and we'd like to highlight the 5 factors that we think weigh in favor of a special exception in this instance. Next one, there we go. Number 1, the use as a short-term rental is compatible with the U2 urban residential district. You know, the folks that stay at this short-term rental on Monroe Street are going to be doing the exact same thing that the neighbors across the street or down the street are doing. They're going to be sleeping, eating, watching TV, visiting with friends. They're going to be walking the streets, going to a performance at the Opera Center. It is the exact use and character of an urban residential district. We think that the maximum limits that we have placed on guests and the required minimum stays of 2 nights per guest will result in a low-intensity use. And most importantly, I would note that there are 2 other short-term rental properties that are currently operating close by in this U2 district. The Dugan House property on Union Street and the Sterling House property on Main Street. Second factor that we think weighs in favor of granting it, number 2. The use will have negligible impact on close-by properties. The property is located between U1 and U2. It has the wooded ravine, as I've noted earlier, on one side, railroad easement on the other. It's separated by city streets, and we have off-street parking. Next slide. Thank you. We believe that the potential noise issues are mitigated by the proactive steps that we've taken. Those house rules that I referred to earlier will prohibit any loud noise during the hours of Delphi's curfew. We have otherwise limited unreasonably loud noise. We are prohibiting, and this is important, we are prohibiting parties or large gatherings on the property. We're prohibiting dogs that are outside unattended, and we're prohibiting children that would be outside unattended and unsafe without adult supervision. Next slide. The 4th reason that we think weighs in favor of granting the exception, that we have made a substantial financial investment in this property. As a result, I think it's highly unlikely that you're going to see issues of nuisance or property maintenance. Frankly, it is in our interest that this property remains in as good condition as possible so that we can attract guests to the short-term rental. Next slide, please. And I think last, at least as of last Thursday, I believe, when I checked with Gloria and Cameron, there had been no opposition to this filing for a special exception. We've done everything that we were asked of. We've published the notice, we've posted the sign, we've invited neighbors in to 2 open houses. We've shared with them the house rules that you have seen. We've explained to them that we do not want any disruption to the residential character of that neighborhood, and we have given them our contact number and asked that they at any time share concerns or issues that they have. Next slide. So, in light of the factors that we've reviewed and listed, we believe that the board can reasonably find tonight in favor of the special exception and adopt these proposed findings. First, that it is a consistent use with the character in the zoning district in which it is located, and it is consistent with Delphi's ordinance, which encourages short-term rentals. Next slide, please. Second finding that we would believe could be adopted by this board, that the property will be used to be harmonious in an appropriate appearance within the existing or intended character of the general vicinity, and that the use will not change the essential character of that area. And next slide, please. And last, we think it is appropriate to find that granting this special exception will not be contrary to the general purposes served by the zoning ordinance, and it will not impair or injure any of the other properties or uses in that same zoning district. And the last slide. So with that, I close the presentation. I thank you for your time, and we would respectfully request that the special exception be granted, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions from the board?
Jeff?
I have watched, it seems like I travel the road quite frequently, and I watched the whole term of you going, and really impressed, very
Thank you.
impressed with you and what you've done.
Thank you.
There was no downside to it, the only downside I have for neighbors who like it, why wouldn't I like it? And the only thing you said that's probably not correct is they're not like neighbors down there, they're gonna spend more money than a normal person would when they come to town. They're gonna go to their businesses, they're gonna eat, and probably the expenditure financially doubles what the normal person would be living. So it has no downside in my opinion. Thank you very much for doing it.
Sure.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
How many parking spaces do you have?
So there are room for 4 off-street.
Oh, 4 off street, okay, that exceeds the,
Yeah, the ordinance only requires 1.
1 or 2?
My review of the ordinance was 1. Cindy?
It's 1.5 per unit on rentals.
Right, but
But
if
if you got
it's a.
4, so it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, exactly. If it's a
Well,
single-family residence, I think it's 1.
Yeah, but rentals are typically 1.5 per.
1.5 per unit.
Per unit, which, you know, you can't have a half season, so you have to have 2. Minimum 2, you know, if you have 2 units, you have to have minimum 3. Yeah. So. Okay. Any other questions?
How many can you house altogether? How many people can you house in the house at one time?
We're capping it at 4. So there are 2 bedrooms, you know, you can have fewer, but we think the maximum that occupancy should be 4.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Okay, staff report?
Jeffrey Bean and Eric is it Dreniger?
Yeah.
That's it. Submitted an application for the special exception use on August 2021. Property located at 703 East Monroe Street, Delphi, Indiana. The Delphi City zoning ordinance required a special exception for a home to be used as a short-term rental for property zoned U2 urban residential, as stated in Article 3, Section 1, Paragraph B. The sign was properly posted. Notice was published in the Carroll County Comment on September 8th. Letters were sent to the adjoining property owners by certified mail as required. The staff received no communications from any of the adjoining property owners prior to completion of the staff report. The property has been improved upon and remodeled, which will increase the assessed value of the property and the income to the community. It is the opinion of the staff that a recommendation to the city of Delphi be awarded for approval of the special exception, as it would not endanger the public health, safety, or morals of other community members. This area has been improved by additional remodeling and upgrades to the property. Therefore, the staff would provide a favorable recommendation to the city of Delphi for approval of this special exception.
Thank you. Is there anyone who'd like to speak in support of the special exception? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the special exception? Hearing none, we'll move on. The next thing on the agenda would be to determine whether we're going to make a motion to proceed with the questions, or to make 3. Does this fall under is the recommendation, or is it technically a special exception? Special exception, so we would go with the special exception questions. You know, so we either have to make a motion to deny it, or to proceed with the special exception questions. And then each one of them will need to be answered individually. So do I hear a motion on the floor?
I motion for the questions. I have 3 questions, right?
5 on special exceptions. I don't know if are they exactly the same as the ones for the county? You know what page they're on? So, houses.
Here's the different one.
That's your pretty different.
Are you in the cities or the counties? Yeah, that's the counties.
You're in the county.
This is
See
the city.
that?
You gotta be in the city.
It's in the back of the. Here's the question.
Okay, we'll just. Okay. So we have a motion on the floor and seconded, any discussion from the board? Hearing none, call the question, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We'll proceed with questions. Before a special exception is granted, the board shall find. First question is that the special exception will not endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. And a motion must be made in such a manner to indicate that it will not endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare.
Well, I think this exception to this would be to, it wouldn't, there's nothing's really changed other than the outlook of the house itself. And, I don't see any public safety, any change in that at all.
Okay. So your second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Discussion from the board. Hearing none, call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Second question, that the special exception will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the vicinity, not diminish and impair property values within the neighborhood.
Property values of this area is surely gonna go up from what they've done to it, number one. Number two, the use is not changing. Still gonna be single family people living there. It has to be that.
That's fine. Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion from the board? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Third item, that the special exception will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding property or uses permitted in the district.
I move that, because there is, it's not gonna impede the normal development, and is surrounded by, he showed us that it's surrounded by woods and streets on two sides that it will, be just for.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion from the board? Call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Fourth question, that adequate utilities, access road, drainage, and other necessary facilities have been or are being provided.
Nothing's really changed with the property except the off-street parking he provided, and everything else is staying where it's at, so can't be any change for it was, except he made the home better and the site better.
Motion's made and seconded. Discussion from the board. Hearing none, call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That ingress and egress points are so designed as to minimize traffic congestion in the public streets.
Well, as he said, all the parking is on the property, so he's provided parking, so it shouldn't change anything in traffic flow.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion from the board? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, gentlemen. Thank you. BZA has granted you a special exception for the use of the property according to the Delphi zoning ordinance. Thank you. Okay. next item on the agenda is, variance B 2021-8, Tillman Infrastructure / AT&T. And according to Cameron, that has been postponed to the next meeting.
Yes, we were made aware yesterday that they wish to continue this to, table this to the October meeting, so
Okay.
they will not be present tonight, and, they will reappear on the October agenda.
Next item is director's report.
For those of you that were here for the APC meeting, we've had 30 new homes to date, or at the end of August, we had 30 new dwellings. Total permits, at the end of August were 233. We did 19 site visits, we did 4 compliance certificates, 3 new 911 addresses. Last month, we did, the month prior to that, we did 1 special exception, 2 rezone requests. Like I told the ABC board, I attended the National Flood Plain Academy in Maryland, the course for the floodplain management. And then I went to the Indiana Floodplain Managers Conference in Evansville, all with the purpose of trying to get this test under my belt, and I took the test, and we'll see what the results are, so, pretty optimistic. It was pretty hard, to say the least, but we'll see what happens. Lori did a great job handling all the day-to-day operations at the office. Her and Donnie and Cindy handled everything while I was gone, and everything went smoothly, so. We got a couple properties that we're looking into to get cleaned up. We made progress with one. We're gonna start tackling a couple others. So, that's, the good news is we're making progress with them. A couple of them have been repeat issues for several years, and we've kind of nailed it down to where we're ready to take it to the next step if we have to. We are making progress. Other than that, the office is staying busy every day. A lot of phone calls coming in, so. A lot of requests on what can be built, land use, a lot of stuff coming in floodplain management, so. Been busy, so hats off to Gloria and Cindy and Donna, they've done a great job on them, so. That's all I got.
Your, property cleanup, one of those on Horseshoe Bend.
That's it.
I'm just kind of curious, because there was one that was,
The one that we addressed last month was out, by CNC Beach. So we had progress, we sent them a letter, we sent several letters in the past, and they made progress, yet it went back to what it was. So this letter was a little bit more stern, the neighbors were to the point where they were sick of looking at it, and they called, and so they did make progress, they cleaned the front up, and it looked really good. The bad part is they took everything from the front and put it in the back.
this isn't one that the VZ.
No, right down the road, actually.
Okay.
So we got a couple more, one of them is in the city limits, and we're teaming up with the city of Delphi. It's already been sent a letter, in the past, so we're gonna tackle it next. Honestly, it's an issue we deal with every single day in everything. We get calls on these, and we send out letters, and I make site visits, and I talk to them, and, always get told we're gonna clean it up, and they do. A lot of them do, but then it reverts back to what it was prior, so it's a never-ending battle, and it's not just the city, and it's all over Carroll County, and I reached out to the White County Director, and, Tippecanoe County, it's something that they face a lot of too, so we'll make it baby steps, but we're chipping away and getting it cleaned up, so.
Cindy?
Beyond that, they don't like receiving letters from attorneys. You just do what you gotta do sometimes.
All right, then, next item is additional information and concern to the board. Last meeting, Jeff had asked for some information on the, calculations of the frontage.
I haven't been in the office enough to do any of that yet, I've been,
You sent it to him.
did I send it? What was the?
I copied.
Did I do it the day after?
Yeah, you did.
So.
Did you get what you needed, Jeff?
Oh, for Pontiac.
Yes.
Yes, we had their engineering staff
Yeah.
send us, and they were actually on the front of the sheet, so that's, they're a certified engineer for the
I
construction.
can't figure it out, but they can, and they got the credentials, so they, that's all I need.
I looked at this, I pointed it out in the meeting, that section of it, but it's, they're certified engineers, and
Circumference.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I did scan that to you the day after.
Okay. Any other concerns or questions, board?
Well, I shouldn't make this with the people here, but thanks for the great packet. There's much information in there.
That's all glory
I
mill.
mean, there's probably more than what we need, but it's all here.
Yeah.
And it's all
She
very,
does a great
very
job
good.
preparing things, so kudos to her.
Thank you.
Any others?
Presentation was great, so there's a lot of information there.
Excellent presentation.
You guys got stuff that you want presented at these meetings, by all means, email me prior to, because I like going to these meetings with everything in front of me, we can sit right down through it, so. If I have to do a PDF of something, or whatever you guys need to get it streamlined and get questions answered, by all means, just shoot me an email, and we'll have everything in the format you want for each meeting.
And then for technology, okay.
Yes.
Hey, I'm there every day.
Yeah, it's-
Last hit button, nothing like that.
No, nothing's working, beacons all over the place, and it's just, I think it's just the nature of the beast, but we're working through it, so,
I feel your pain.
you know, it's all over the county, so.
So,
Yeah. Our phone system is through the internet.
so,
Then we get phone calls, they can't hear us.
yep.
The schools is the same, and I've got one of my offices that works on the reprogram.
At work, I push my cell phone to dial a number, and it dials, you hear it ring, you hear them answer, and as soon as they answer, it goes beep and dead.
That's what ours did yesterday. Everybody that called in, I could hear them going, hello, 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 hello.
Mine doesn't even do that, it just goes beep, call into it.
But then the next phone call will work on.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
I moved that we adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's all, folks.